All right, hey guys, Dr. Tim Kruse. Sometimes it's nice if the dots line up and the line goes through every one of the dots. That's nice when they line up nicely. But most of the time in real life, they don't. Your dots are going to be scattered around. Your data points will be scattered around. And the best you can do is just draw the best line that you can that kind of passes through the middle of the data. And we call that a line of best fit or a regression line of regression. So today we'll use a graphing calculator to plot these data points and to add that regression line onto the graph. Okay, so given a table where maybe the X column is the year and the Y column, that's usually they're measuring something, how many of something, or they measured something that happened in this year, or after this much time passed, you had this many. So in the year 2000, we had 3 of something. Make up your own story. In 2001, we had 5. 2002, we had 7. 2003, we had 9. And 2004, we had 11. Now remember, usually they don't want you to use the date for your X number. Usually they'll say something like let T for time, or maybe it's D for date. And they'll say something like let T be the number of years since that first year in the table. So if this is our first year, that's going to be year 0, because they said, how many years have passed since 2000? Well, 2000 itself, no time has passed. We're going to call that initial value later. All right. Back in junior high, you called this the y-intercept. At time 0, you were 3 steps up in the air. All right. Now, 1 year later is 1. 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later, that's 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to use these numbers in our table for our X values. All right. So in function notation, we would call the X values T, and then maybe they tell you to use N for number or whatever they're using. And we would say that the Y values are N in terms of T, or the number depends on how much time has gone by, or the number depends on what year it is. So this number depends on what year it is. This number depends on what year it is. All right, let's start by plotting the data points. All right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to hit the Stat button right there, Stat, and we're going to choose Edit. So choose number 1, Edit. Now that's going to bring you to the table, and in List 1, L1 means List 1, L2 means List 2. In List 1, we're going to put all our X values. Now if you have something in your calculator, just hit Delete. It's probably the easiest way. There's quicker ways, but just hit Delete, Delete, Delete. Now, I like to show this every time. Sometimes you accidentally go too high and you accidentally delete your whole list, like I just deleted list 2 accidentally. Don't panic if that happens. Just hit Stat and go down to option 5 and choose that. You might have to press Enter again, and that'll allow you to bring back list 2. All right. So Stat Setup Editor, that'll bring back your list if you accidentally delete it. All right, at this point, we're kind of making sure everything's empty. We're going to put our X values in here and our Y values in there. And then I want to make sure that Y equals is empty. If you have any kind of equation in there, just come down here and hit Clear. All right, so that's a good first step, is just make sure everything's clear. Stat, Edit, make sure your table's empty. Y equals, make sure you don't have an equation in there. All right. And then anytime you want to just clear the screen, you hit Quit, blue Quit. So second function quit, and we're back to our screen. Hit Clear if you don't want to see anything. All right, so we've got everything cleaned up. Let's go and put our data into our table. So Stat, Edit, Edit. There we go. And go ahead and put your numbers in. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 for X. Make sure you hit Enter after 4. And then go over to List 2 and put in your Y values. So 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. Make sure you hit Enter after you hit the 11. All right, now that you have those in, I'm going to go ahead and try and show those dots. Now I need to set up my stat plot and make sure it's ready to go. Make sure it's going to show the picture that I want it to show. So I'm going to go up to stat plot, second function, stat plot, and I'm going to set this up. Now mine, I left that turned on. Let me show you what yours probably looks like. Let me turn this off so you guys can see it. Okay, yours probably looks like this. All right, none of your plots are turned on. I kind of remember that the word plot rhymes with dot. That's kind of how I remember that this is where I go to turn my dots on to do a picture of a scatter plot. So the first thing I want to do is I want to select one. I want to get into that menu. And yours is probably turned off, so just go over to on and select on. So now you're turning the dots on. All right, you need to go down and pick out a type. You got all kinds of types here. You can do that kind of line graph, a bar graph, a box and whisker. There's several options there. We just want the first option right there, that scatter plot. So if it's not selected already, go ahead and select it. On X list and Y list, you just want to make sure that says list 1 and list 2. It's just saying where are you pulling the X's from. I'm going to pull the X values from list 1. And it says where did you put your Y values? I put my Y values in list 2. Now as far as your mark, you can choose any kind of mark you want to. I'm just going to use this first mark right here. All right, so here's where we're at on the instructions. You can pick whatever mark you want. All right, now we're ready to go look at those dots. So I'm going to hit zoom stat. Now, by the way, students are tempted to hit graph, and graph won't always zoom correctly. It won't always show you a good picture. So make sure when you're at this point and you just want to see the dots, just hit zoom stat. So zoom and then stat, you got to scroll down, I believe it's number 9, and choose number 9. And there's a nice picture of those 5 data values that you picked out, that you put in your table. So there's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Now, if you want to see the exact coordinates, you can hit trace if you want to. Trace is right over here. And if you hit trace and then use your arrow keys, it says this dot right here is 0, 3. You can kind of verify that you entered it correctly. 1, 5, 2, 7, 3, 9, and 4, 11. So you can trace those dots if you like. All right, now I want to add the regression line. Okay, I want to add the regression line, so I want to draw a line through these points, as good as I can, the best line that I can. Well, first I need an equation. Once I get an equation, I'm going to put it right here in the y equals button, but I got to come up with an equation first. So I'm going to hit stat. I'm going to go right over to calculate. I'm going to choose option 4. See where it says regression line, and it's going to give us our y equals mx plus b equation. They're using a for the m, but that's okay. All right, that's our mx plus b. Choose that. Now on the 84, they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. So they're asking me, did you put your x's in list 1? Yes. Did you put your y's in list 2? Yes. Don't mess with frequency list. Don't mess with store reg. And then just get down here to calculate. And it'll tell you what your equation is. All right. So what it's told me so far, let me scoot this down a little bit. What it's told me so far is it says, hey, here's what I'm giving you. And the a value is 2 and the b is 3. So replace the a with 2, replace the b with 3. Here's your equation, y equals 2x plus 3. Once you have your equation, just put it into y equals. All right, so y equals, we're just going to go to y equals, we're going to put in this equation, 2, now remember where your x button is, it's right here, right there, x plus 3. And then we don't have to zoom or anything because our zoom was already set when we did zoom stat. So we don't have to do any zooming or anything. We're just going to hit graph and it draws the line. All right. Now I started you off with a nice, easy table of values. And those values actually lined up and the regression line went right through every one of those values. But in real life, that doesn't happen. The values are just kind of scattered all around and the line kind of cuts through the middle of them. It's a line of best fit. A regression line. All right, now something that's kind of handy to know, I don't know how necessary it is, but it's kind of cool, is we can turn these dots on and off, and we can turn the line on and off. So I'll just show you how to do that real quick. If I want to turn the dots off, I just go to y equals, and I deselect plot 1. So I'm going to y equals, where I put my equation. And you guys see up there on plot 1, I'm going to go up to plot 1. That's highlighted, that's selected already. That's what you did when you went into stat plot and you set all that stuff up and you turned the dots on. You turned this guy on here, plot 1, you turn the dots on. So if I want to turn the dots off, I'm going to deselect it. Let me scroll off of it. See, it's not selected anymore. And I just hit graph, and now my dots are gone. If I want to put them back, y equals, go up to plot 1, turn it back on, hit graph, and there your dots are back. Now maybe I want to turn the line off, go back to y equals. Now notice that this equals sign right here, that's selected, it's highlighted. That means the line is on. If you'll just deselect it, hit enter, see how it's not highlighted anymore, and hit graph, and now my line's gone. My dots are still there because I got the plot turned on, but I got the line turned off. You want to turn the line back on, go to equals, select it, see it's highlighted again, hit graph, and your line comes back on. Okay, just kind of handy. And you guys can always hit trace if you want to, so you can trace and make sure you put those dots in there correctly. All right, to finish off this lesson, I just gave you guys a couple of practice here, and I'll go through the answer here in just a minute. So pause the video, write down this table, see if you can plot the data points in the regression line, and then do the same thing for this table here. Now, I will give you a heads up. Look at what your y values are doing. It's going up, 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 up. This is increasing. My slope is going to go uphill. So expect a positive slope on this one. And this one here is going down to 2, down to 1.7, down to 1.2. That's decreasing. So expect your slope, or that number in front of the x, expect it to be negative on this one. All right, go ahead and pause the video. See if you can plot the data points in the regression line for both of these, and then I'll come back and work it out with you. All right, so I'm going to go through this first one here. Let's put in our data, stat, edit. Now I've already put in my data. Notice I'm not using the years over here. I'm using 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, the years since 2004. Even though I didn't specifically tell you that, you can figure it out. Here's my y values. They're increasing, increasing, increasing. So I'm going to expect a positive slope. All right, now we've already set up our plot, so we don't have to go into stat plot anymore. We just have to make sure that y equals, make sure that's empty, and then make sure your dots are turned on. So make sure plot 1 is turned on. And remember, don't hit graph because it doesn't always zoom correctly. You want to do the zoom stat, number 9. There it is. And that'll give you a nice, pretty picture of your dots. Now notice this is kind of a real life, data sample where they don't always line up exactly. So we kind of want to know what the equation of this line is. We're just going to draw the best line that we can through the middle of the data, and we're going to come up with an equation for that line. So let's calculate that equation. Stat, calculate, down to linear regression line. I usually just hit enter a bunch of times until I get to calculate. There's my equation right there. So I'm going to put my equation into y equals 0.197x plus 4.252. And we don't have to zoom or anything because everything's all set up. All we got to do is hit graph. And there's our line. That's the best line that we can draw through the middle of the data. That's called a line of best fit. It's called a regression line. All right, everything looks good. You can verify, with trace, you can just verify that you put the dots in right. So 0, 4.29 looks good. 1, 4.47, that's correct. 2, 4.58. 3, 4.76, and 4, 5.13. Everything looks good. All right, hopefully you pause the video and work this one out. Again, I'm not going to use the years. I'm going to call this year 0, and then the rest of them are how many years has it been since 2005. So this will be a 2, this will be a 4, this will be a 6, and this will be a 8. 2013 is 8 years after 2005. All right, let's go ahead and enter our data. So stat, edit. Now I've already entered my data. All right, you guys pause the video and catch up if you haven't done that already. Okay, I want to make sure that I don't have an equation in y equals. I want to make sure that's cleared out. I want to make sure I got my dots turned on. I do. And I don't want to hit graph because it doesn't always zoom correctly. I want to hit zoom and then choose number 9 for zoom stat. And there's my dots, and they're going downhill kind of like we expected, because we noticed that the y values were decreasing. So we were kind of expecting a downhill line. All right, let's add the regression line to it. So I want to put it into y equals, but I need the equation first. Stat, calculate, regression line. On the 84, I just hit equals a bunch of times. Just make sure that you're putting your x's in list 1 and you're putting your y's in list 2. As long as that's set, you're good. And there's my equation right there. So I'm going to go to y equals, and I'm going to put in negative 0.32x and plus 2.3. All right, remember, this is the slope in front of the x. That's mx plus b. M is your slope, and notice our slope is negative. All right, that tells us that the line is going downhill. It's going down 32 steps for every 100 it goes over. That's 32 over 100. It's negative, so it's going down 32 steps for every 100 it goes over. All right, let's see, what else? Oh, we want to go ahead and graph that. Now, we don't have to zoom or anything. That's all set. All we have to do on this one is just go straight over to graph, and it draws the best line that it can through the middle of that data. All right, guys, that's it for this lesson.